As I was trying to hold up both the boxes for the thumbnail, a bunch of the cards and stuff fell out of my old box of Hero Quest. So anyway, I mentioned when I showed off, I did the unboxing video for the new Hero Quest, that I was going to pull my old Hero Quest box out of storage and show you the differences between the old Hero Quest and the new one. So, um, yeah. So first of all, the box art. So this is the original Hero Quest box art. As you can see, it's very late 80s, early 90s. And with the big Schwarzenegger-esque barbarian on the front. We've got zombies and the wizard. There's the elf in the background too. I love this Chaos Warrior up at the front. And this is the image on the back showing the game board laid out with all the miniatures and the happy children playing. And it says, "For many years the land has been at peace. The darkness that once threatened to engulf it is forgotten, but the darkness was not destroyed, only banished." Unfortunately, there's a tear through that bit. But dare you take up the challenge of Hero Quest and enter the underground realm of Morcar, the evil wizard? Told you he was. Toby, that was bad timing. Told you the original name for the evil wizard was Morcar. There were great treasures to be won if you can overcome their fell guardians. The dark caverns hold many dangers, terrible monsters, deadly traps, and worse. Each game is a unique adventure set in a different underground stronghold. You must explore unlit tunnels and mysterious rooms, rooting out the servants of Morcar wherever they may lurk. Every adventure you complete takes you one step closer to becoming a hero, a status that few can claim. Some of you will play the part of one of the four bold adventurers. The Barbarian, a mighty warrior from the borderlands, few can match him in Mortal Kombat. The Elf, a member of proud and ancient race whose fighting is matched only by his magical skills. The Wizard, a master of arcane lore whose knowledge and use of magic is unrivaled. The Dwarf, a doughty and fearless warrior with a keen eye for secret doors and traps. One of you will play the part of the servants of Morcar, evil wizard and lord of chaos. With your concealed forces, you can plot against the adventurers. Watch as they fall prey to your monsters and cunning traps. Can you survive in the world of Hero Quest? Can you become the greatest hero and savior of that land? And as I said, this was originally published by MB Games and Games Workshop. I'll have to pick up that mess in a bit. The newest one, the one that was re-released, as you can see, there's a definite homage to the art on the front cover. The style is a little different. And the elf and the dwarf have a different position than they used to. The zombies are more or less in the same position, as is the wizard and the magic that he's trading with the evil wizard in the background. But the original, like, Chaos Sorcerer was much more like Skeletor inspired, while this one looks more like a lich, I suppose. The font style is identical, which is kind of cool. And even the I'm going to try and hold them both up so you can move the mic a bit. So, like I said, the overall feel and look is very similar, including the stonework in the background. But there are a couple of subtle differences. Cool, right? Anyway, the back of this one doesn't show people actively playing the game, but does nevertheless show the board setup with the pieces and some of the pieces in detail. And similarly, it says, for many years, the land has been at peace. The darkness that once threatened to engulf it is forgotten, but the darkness was not destroyed, merely banished, and now it gathers strength once more. Once more, and an ancient evil stirs in the depths of the earth. The land has need of heroes, for without them we are doomed. Which, yeah, is pretty much exactly what it said on the old box. The quest continues. In this exciting fantasy adventure game, you and your fellow players must work together to battle the evil sorcerer Zargon, rather than the evil wizard Morcar, and complete the quests. Playing the hero roles of the barbarian, the dwarf, the elf, or the wizard, you'll all move cautiously through a labyrinth of eerie, dark dungeons. Ghastly monsters will prowl the underground passages. Far below the surface of the known world, Zargon's deadly forces threaten, but wise mentor has taught you well. Find the treasure and make it out safely, or all perish together. And again, it's got it actually shows the miniatures of the four heroes. It says wizard, wielder of powerful magic, elf, master of sword and spell, dwarf, resilient fighter with a keen eye, barbarian, mighty warrior. So it's like a abbreviated, abridged version of what it had originally said. Pop that there for a bit. Pick up these. Oh, Toby, why are you right under my feet? Okay, so I've made a bit of a mess here, but okay. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. So, one of the interesting differences between the old and new sets are the cards. So we have. Sorry, I've got to do a bit of sorting because this all fell out of the box and not necessarily in the order that I wanted to show you it. Character sheets. Okay. Fuck. Just dropped another card. Excuse me. Real fucking professional, Anthony. All right. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. So both games, both versions of the game, Toby, have cards for equipment. As you can see, the art style on there is very definitely inspired by 80s and 90s fantasy. These are the treasure cards, and yeah, I'll show you a better comparison in there. I'm just trying to show you something while I'm sorting out the mess that I made, so that you're not just waiting. The special artifacts, the quest items, have this sort of backing on them, which is kind of cool. The like ancient tome. Funnily enough, the original cards all have a color side and a monochromatic side. So the equipment, the treasure, and the quest item cards all have a color back to show what type of, like, because that's the side that you're looking at most of the time. Did I mess up the? Yeah, got treasure and equipment mixed up here. Grr. All right. So there's think I ended up over the course of my collecting with a couple of different sets here. Very likely. Let's see. So, anyway, what I was saying was that okay. So the equipment, this equipment card right here. So this is equipment that you can buy at the end of each quest. This one's the braces, and as you can see, the braces image is black and white, but the back is color. Same with the treasure. So this is gold that you might pick up when you're searching for it. The back is colored. The front is black and white. The monster cards, though, I'm going to show this one because it's unusual. This is so the Famir, which is a very strange creature that I've never heard of in mythology or folklore. But I've only seen it in Hero Quest and in very early Warhammer, the Famir. It no longer exists. But as you can see, it's full color on the side that shows the monster. And on the back, we've got a colorized black and white image of a monstrous demon thing. And again, it's 80s, 90s fantasy style. And it reminds me a lot of like early edition D&D, actually, with the simple illustrations that were in like first edition. It's a little bit cartoony, but it's cool. And all right, so since I started showing you the cards from there, let's take a look at the cards in the newer version of Hero Quest. That's the monsters. And this one, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the first thing that's of note that's different between the two games is that the new Hero Quest cards, no, do not leave the site. The new Hero Quest cards are very definitely bigger by about a centimeter in both dimensions. These ones that say Hero Quest on one side are just there's no equivalent of these in the original Hero Quest. These are hint cards that tell you what you can do on your turn, and that's awesome, and I love that. I'm glad that they added that. The artifact cards. So, as I mentioned before, in the previous version of the game, the artifact cards look like this. The new ones look like that. Very cool. And let's do a side-by-side comparison of an artifact here. So this is the original Borin's Armor, which allows you to roll 4 combat dice in defense. And this is the modern equivalent of Borin's Armor. You might also notice this version that I've got, this original Hero Quest, was released in Britain. I've mentioned before that when I was in America, I acquired an American version that I think also called I think that one called the Evil Wizard Zorkar as well, or something like that. But anyway, not Morkar like the original. But yeah, Borin's Armor, this magical suit of armor gives you 2 extra defend die. So unlike the original that's just said allows you to roll 4 combat die in defense, the new one says allows you to roll 2 extra. Unlike normal plate mail, this mysterious ultralight metal does not slow down the wearer, may be combined with the helmet and or the shield, and may not be used by the wizards. So the new version of the Borin's Armor, its abilities stack, which is nuts, whilst the original Borin's Armor replaced the... yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Looks like the Wand of Recall which allows you to cast 2 spells instead of 1 during your turn, has been replaced by the Wand of Magic. Similar kind of idea, but just a little subtly different. I also noticed that, as I mentioned before, I've ended up collecting a couple of different sets of a couple of incomplete sets of old Hero Quest and putting them together. Originally, there's only like 5 artifacts in the original game, whilst in the new one there appear to be a lot more. Look at this, all these artifacts. So that's really cool. Okay, so let's put those here. Treasure. All right. So I showed you before that the treasure cards, the original ones looked like that, whilst the new ones look like that. The new, as I've mentioned before in the previous video, the art style with the new ones is definitely much more sort of World of Warcraft inspired, I guess, rather than early D&D. And okay, this is perfect. Okay, so you can, as you're playing the game, you can search around the room. You can search the rooms when they're emptied, and when you finish all the monsters off. And most of the time, when you if there's no specific treasure from the room, you get to search. You get a random treasure card. Occasionally, though, you'll get a trap or a wandering monster, and that's what the original wandering monster card looks like. Funnily enough, there are no monsters in the game that look like this. But each quest tells you what the wandering monster will be, whether it'll be an orc, a skeleton, or a chaos warrior, or whatever. In either case, the wandering monster attacks you immediately. And this is the new wandering monster. Again, much more inspired by modern fantasy. Very cool looking. I think I missed what I was saying before. So what I wanted to point out with the difference between the British set and the American set, besides just the different wizard, is that my original Hero Quest says Borin's Armour, spelled Armour, whilst my new set doesn't have the U. The U is missing. Incidentally, so that's treasure. And you can get heroic brew, potions of strength, and stuff like that, just like you could in the old one. But I've also I've got a couple of different sets, but it does look like the new treasure deck's a little thinner than the old one. That's possibly because I've got 2 sets together. Now, these cards are actually the heroes, and the players can pick. Now, this is one of the other subtle differences, and I'm not sure. Okay, so let's do a side-by-side with the elf. Okay, so in the original set, the hero cards look like this: wizard, dwarf, elf, barbarian. That's the elf right there. The barbarian is the same illustration from the top of the box. That's the dwarf, and there's the wizard. As you can see, like I said, very kind of 90s fantasy style. The new elf looks like this. As I said, very much more World of Warcraft, sort of pseudo-anime style. There's the side-by-side comparison between the 2 elves. The stats pretty much the same. It's just a very different style. There's the side-and-side comparison of the Barbarian. Now, one of the things that are different is that these cards are thicker. They're sturdy, and they happen to be the same size as the character sheets. So the idea is that you could lean on your character. You could use the. I don't know if you can see it clearly on the camera, but there's little indentations in the card from where we've been leaning on it to write. And yeah, so the character sheets look like that. The new character, let's go on a little bit of a tangent here. The new character sheets look like this. Now, there's more room on the new character sheets, which is cool. And instead of there being a tiny little box to keep track of your body points and mind points, they've got this body point tracker, which is kind of cool. So generally a lot more room on the character sheets for noting down stuff, which is cool, which I like. But I do miss the larger card stock, the thick card, the heavy card descriptions of the characters, because you can't, these are too small. You're not going to be able to lean on that. Well, yeah. On the other hand, you're not going to ruin these cards by using them to lean on to write. But anyway, so that's the character cards and the difference between them there. Monsters. Okay. So, all right. So I'm going to pick out pick out a couple of different ones here. First, we'll use a similarity. So this monster card is the original orc, and as you can see, it's very classic fantasy orc, old school fantasy orc. This is the new orc. Again, much more inspired by modern fantasy and World of Warcraft. Their stats, again, are pretty much the same. But now, one of the things that was interesting about the old game is that until the expansions came out, all the monsters only had one body point, so they were really easy to squish. And feel good about squishing them, because the game was definitely weighted in the hero's favor. But I'm going to show you one of the differences now. This is the original Chaos Warrior. Now, these Chaos Warriors really captured my imagination as a kid, and I loved them. And I'll show you the miniatures for them later. But when I started collecting Warhammer, I started collecting Chaos Warriors, the Chaos Warrior army as a result. Now, this new version of Hero Quest is not associated with Games Workshop at all. It has no ties to Games Workshop, so they decided not to use Chaos to reference Chaos Warriors or anything like that. So instead, we've got the Dread Warrior, which objectively is really freaking sick. And they move more squares than the original Chaos Warrior. They have more attack dice, the same amount of defense dice, same amount of mind points, but they've got 3 body points instead of just 1. So they're a lot tougher to squish. Now, having said that, they do include in the new game something that drew my attention as soon as I opened the box. They've got these little death marker things, which they didn't have in the original game, that to keep track of how many body points the monsters have lost as you're fighting them. Now, I mentioned before that in the old game we had these guys, the Famirs. These have not come over to the new game at all. Instead, they've been replaced with the Abomination. But as you can see, the stats are more or less the same, except the Abomination has 1 more body point than the original Famir. But yeah, that's the new equivalent is this Lovecraftian fish person. They're awesome. But yeah, we got zombies and skeletons just like the old set. But even the goblins have gotten a makeover. And then of course there's the classic. Now if you've seen the video, the best thing about Hero Quest, then you'll have heard about the gargoyle. And that's the new version. Now, funnily enough, this gargoyle went on to be the model is pretty much exactly the same as the OG Warhammer Bloodthirster. Whilst the new gargoyle definitely looks more like, even though he's still got the same serrated sword, and I'll show you that later. The gargoyle itself looks more like an actual gargoyle than the original, in my opinion. Spells. So I'll just use so the original we had earth, air, fire, and water. I will show spells as well as the chaos spells, otherwise known as dread spells. The air spells all had this like cartoony genie type character on the back, whilst the new one, it still looks somewhat personified. Like there's definitely a face in there, but it looks less like a cartoon genie and much more threatening. And this is the equivalent. This is the Tempest OG and the new one. As you can see, the art style has been given a makeover. Yeah, there's earth, air, fire, and water, and they've all gotten they've all gotten the facelift. But they're the same spells, which is cool, and I love that. Equipment cards, the original equipment cards, new equipment cards. I love that there's like a homage to the original skull face shield on the new one over here. Yeah, and there we go, shield. Let's use that as the comparison. And once again, there's definitely, they've updated the style, but there's a definite homage. Like they clearly loved and respected the original game. Even though this shield is a lot more expensive than the old one. This is 150 gold pieces, while the new one was, well, the old one was 100. So that's inflation for you, I guess. And that's the different cards in the game. Let's brought those up to date, I think. I'm going to put this bands back on so they don't move around too much in the box. Because I want, with the new game, I want things to move around a little less. So let's pick up these old cards and move on to some of the other bits in the old box. All right. Tatty old box lid. That's now. Yeah. So this is the original Hero Quest board. And I know this off by heart, and I think I showed the new board in the last video. It looks to be, well, it is definitely a smidge bigger because this folds out into quarters instead of halves. And yeah, just a smidge bigger. Let's rotate it so that it's the same part of the map that we're showing. There we go. Okay, so I don't know if you can make that out, but they've definitely tried to keep the look and feel of the old board on the new one. It's not actually identical like I thought it was, but the shape of the rooms and the colors of the rooms, and the motifs, like this blood splatter right here is in the exact same spot on the new one, but the configuration of the broken skulls is almost identical but slightly different, as you can see. Same here, like it's a clear, strong homage to the original board. Yeah. Okay. Quest book. Stop pressing on the mouse. Okay. Yeah. This is the OG quest book. And there's the new one. And one of the things that I mentioned is that these are almost identical, including the description. The very first page, the fire burns warmly, but casts little light into Mentor's study. The flickering shadows only hint at the vast number of books and scrolls that fill the many shelves. Slowly, Mentor walks over to the fire. Well, my friends, your training is complete. You are not yet heroes. You have yet to prove yourselves. But first, let me tell you of, and in this version it says Zargon, in the original it says Morcar, but besides that, it's word for word identical. Many centuries ago, Morcar / Zargon was my apprentice. This is different. The original says he worked hard and learned quickly, but impatience devoured him, and he wanted to learn more powerful magic. Whilst the original with the young sorcerer worked hard and learned quickly, but impatience devoured Zargon, who wanted to learn more powerful magic. I spoke of the dangers and cautioned patience, for in time my apprentice would become a great sorcerer. I told him of the dangers, that he should be patient, for in time he would become a great wizard. Yeah, so there's subtle differences, but it is more or less, if you were to continue to read through both versions, they're almost exactly word for word. And of course, the very first quest, the trial, has the exact same layout, the exact same briefing. There's only a couple of subtle differences. Like, okay, so in this one, in the new version, there are no monsters in the corridor. Okay, cool. All right, so the first room's identical. The next room, along with the bookcase and the office, is identical. The torture chamber is identical. However, in the original, there is a goblin outside the torture chamber door and an orc in the corridor as the heroes come out of the room. All the familiars have been replaced with abominations, understandably. There's a room with a bookcase and a cupboard in it, and in the original, it only contains a bookcase and a cupboard, but also includes 2 Chaos Warriors and a familiar, whilst the new version is 2 Dread Warriors and a chest. So the new version of the trial isn't quite so hard, and that's interesting. The gold piece values are changed too. Like in this one, there's an opportunity for them to gain 100 gold in the room with the skeletons in over here, which doesn't have a chest in this one. But where the chest has been moved to over here, there's only 84 gold pieces. The chest in this room is in the same place, though the configurations of the monsters are slightly different. But again, The original chest contained 150 gold pieces, and this one contains only 120. So yeah, but and interestingly enough, yeah. Okay, so yeah, there's a couple of subtle differences, including the fact that in the final room where they face Verag, there's a chest been added, which okay, that's the one that contains 120. What's in that one? Okay, that one contains the. Oh well, all right. Yeah, actually, they made this chest empty. Um, but in the original one, there was another chest over here that was empty. And yeah, they've moved the chests around and put the biggest cache of treasure in the main room where there wasn't one originally, where Verag the gargoyle is. They've swapped. Verag was originally accompanied by 2 Chaos Warriors and a Famir, whilst in the new one, it's 1 Dread Warrior and 2 Orcs. So that's, like I said, just a couple of subtle differences. We've only played through, my group have only played through the first couple of quests. Looks like, the Rescue of Sir Ragnar actually has a few extra monsters in it that the original didn't, making it a little tougher. Well, that explains a lot, actually, because when we played through the trial, I know from experience from playing the old one that the trial was a tough one, and it was, I think, partly because of those extra monsters in the corridors that aren't in the new version. In the new version, the trial was actually was easier than I expected, and the Rescue of Sir Ragnar, the next one, which the first time I played it through was a lot easier than the original. A lot easier in the original. Was harder in this one, and it actually ended up with almost total party kill. So I mentioned before that my original game had a few extra bits in it. I've even got the quest books from a couple of the expansions, the Kellar's Keep and Return of the Witch Lord. I will eventually be buying the new versions of these too, but I haven't yet. Got some templates from Warhammer in here as well. Okay, so let's take a look at the minis. There's a okay. So yeah, I was going to compare the furniture pieces, but I just remembered, just as I was looking in the box and being confused, that I put the furniture minis in a different box because I had so many in this box that there's no room for them in here anymore. So instead, okay, I may have to go get that box in a second, or maybe do a follow-up video where I compare those ones, because there's no hero minis in here either. Where the fuck did they end up in the other box? Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the baddies because that's all I've got. Now, I'm going to start with my favorites and show you the original Chaos Warriors. Look at those meaty boys. I thought these were, well, these looked big and imposing in the original set because, you know, these are the orcs. So the Chaos Warriors are bigger. Yeah, let's actually start with you. I'll come back to the Chaos Warriors. So yeah, orc with a sword. As you can see, a pretty good 3D version of the monster card I showed you earlier. In the new set, they've actually got 4 different orc variants to make it a little bit more interesting. So let's show you, for comparison, the orc with a sword. So yeah, he's much more humanoid looking, less like a stunted little monster. Um, and there's, again, to show you a direct comparison, I suppose, the orc with a chopper versus the orc with an axe. These miniatures are so cool. I love them. They've also added a couple of female orcs, which again ties into the more like anime / World of Warcraft style that they've gone for with this new set. Which, yeah, that's cool. Now, personally, my own headcanon is that I don't think you would, much like dwarves, you wouldn't know much difference between a male orc and a female orc. But that's just me and my personal fantasy style. But yeah, let's go back to the Chaos Warriors. My favorites versus the Dread Warrior. Now, this is, I may as well point this out too. The original ones are solid, hard plastic, whilst these new miniatures have got a bit of flex, which I suppose means that they would break less easily, but it just seems a little bit rubbery. However, this, on the appearance alone, this Dread Warrior looks like it would probably kick the Chaos Warrior's ass. So I did a little bit of, I made some attempts to paint these miniatures when I was young and inexperienced. There's a mummy and the mummy in the new set. And zombies. This is one of my badly painted zombies from the old set. And there's a new zombie. And goblins. I love goblins. They're a lot of fun. So there's the original goblins, which I think were very characterful, but I think they managed to capture that same sort of character in the new ones. And once again, there are variant goblins. Now, there were technically variant goblins in the original one as well, because some of them carry different shaped swords. Can I find an example of that? Nope. Yeah, actually. Because this one's got like a curved sword instead of the... yeah. So there was a little bit of variation with the orcs as well. With the weapons, but the actual poses weren't any different. Whilst now we've got 3 different goblins in very different poses with very different weapons. And again, one of them looks like a girl, which, yeah. That's fun. Now, the Chaos Sorcerer, where are you? Oh, this is one of my attempts to paint the Chaos Warriors from the old set. God damn it. Meh. All right. Skeleton with a broken scythe versus the new skeletons. Okay. Shit, I got stuff missing. Grr. That's frustrating. The original Famir model, very dynamic, very dramatic, versus the new scary Abomination. All right. Again, this is extremely unprofessional, but I'm going to try and find that other box. I will be back really quickly. As fast as I can. Okay. Got some other tile pieces and stuff from my original set as well. Okay. So, I'll show you this. So this was the original Evil Wizard screen that would that you'd keep the quest book behind while you were playing. And this is the new one. It is slightly bigger, but as I said before, a definite loving homage to the original. Again, they've clearly replaced the Thamir with an Abomination. The Chaos Warrior with a Dread Warrior. The old zombie with the new one. But overall, despite the difference in art style, it's got a very similar sort of feel to it, which is cool. All right. All right. Since I found my furniture, let's show off some of the differences and similarities with the furniture. Let's put the minis there. So the original minis, the original furniture items were a combination of plastic pieces and cardboard inserts like this. So there was this piece of card that you folded up and inserted into the plastic. And these were very cool. And you could even put little skulls. There were even little skulls that you could turn on the top. Now, interestingly enough, they do have the skulls in the new set, but they don't slot in. I think you have to glue them on if you want to use them. But there's the new version of the bookcase, which is a completely plastic or resin version instead of it being plastic and cardboard. And similarly, the cupboard with a rat and a skull on top. And again, we do have little ratties in the new set. So I could balance him on there to try and imitate as best as I can. But yeah, as you can see, they've definitely tried to match the style somewhat. The fireplace. Now, this fireplace is interesting because I've got a bit of a like whenever I think of this fireplace, it's the evil wizard Morcar who's in that portrait. But as you can see, it's quite clearly a king of some kind, which seems a bit odd to have a portrait of the king in the evil monster's lair. And again, this is a piece of card that's folded and stuck into a plastic base. Whilst the new fireplace, they've imitated the style of the fireplace to a certain extent, but it is completely plastic. Like, it's got the same shape. It's got these brick effect on the back. It's, yeah. There's a clear, loving homage to each and every item in here. Like, these are the old chests, which have a piece of cardboard curled over between the two pieces of plastic. There's supposed to be a plastic supporting rod in there too, but that's got misplaced over time. And these are the new plastic chests. But yeah, and the doors. Okay. So as you're going through the dungeon, you'll come across doors that look like this, and you'll ask them to be opened, in which case they get replaced for these ones. But now, so that's the old doors. Now we've got plastic closed doors, and likewise plastic open frames. So again, side-by-side comparison now, and the classic weapon rack containing all of the different weapons, and the new version still has okay, again, there's a definite homage. There's the shield on this end, and the shield on that end both have the lion on it, and the weapons that are on the rack are more or less the same, but the shield on the other end is a little different, and I'll explain why. Because in Hero Quest, you use combat die. These are the original combat die, and if you're attacking, then you're trying to get as many of these skulls to come up as possible. If you're defending, you want the white shields with the rampant lion on if you're a good guy, and if you're playing the evil wizard, you want the black shield to come up. And likewise with the new set, there's the skulls, which, side-by-side comparison. And then you've got the white shield with a lion on it. The lion is a little different. It's still a lion, but it's a lion head shield rather than the rampant lion, which is interesting because in the weapon rack, they've still got the rampant lion on the shield on this end, but the shield on the other end resembles the black shield from the new set. I don't know if you can see that clearly, even though the shield on the other end looks like the white shield, the rampant lion from the old set. Whatever. The dice are a little bit bigger in the new set too, and the red die, the movement die, and they look identical, so we won't bother with that. There is one feature that I really like, that I enjoy from the new one, is one of my... Can I find it? There it is. Yes. Okay. So one of my favorite furniture pieces from the old game was the tomb, which again has a piece of cardboard connected to a piece of plastic, and this ancient hero carved into the top of it. The new set also has a tomb. This one's all plastic. The figure that's molded onto the top is a little bit different. In fact, this guy's got a helmet on, so he could be anybody. But the thing I really like about the new one is that it opens. I don't think I've seen any quests that actually make use of that, but theoretically, it's just a fun little detail that I like about it. So, anything else? The tiles have been updated to represent the new style, but that's fairly obvious. Table. But yeah, so that's the furniture, pretty much. Can I find... Yes. Okay. So, remember I mentioned before that the elf style has changed. quite a lot. So there's the original elf miniature, and this is the one I used to always play as when I was playing as a kid. And this is the new elf, still holding a short sword, but the new elf is a girl and it's got much pointier ears. I mean, you can even on the tiny miniature, you can see those pointed ears sticking out, right? Back in the box. The wizard. Since I can find him. So that's the original wizard. His hand has been glued back on. I don't know if you can see that. And that's the new version of the wizard. Again, a very definite homage to the original mini. Unlike the elf, which is dramatically different. So yeah. I've got a few other miniatures here that I added that have nothing to do with the original game. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Side by side comparison between old Hero Quest and new Hero Quest. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, even though it was a disorganized mess and did not go as planned at all. But yeah, so I don't know what else I'll be doing with this channel or what'll show up. I may end up talking about. I've just downloaded the Pathfinder core set and a bunch of other books from Humble Bundle for a lot less than I would have paid buying hard copies of the books. I still want to get the hard copies of all the Pathfinder books, but I don't have them yet. Don't have the money yet. So maybe on a future video, I will talk through what I'm learning about Pathfinder and keep you updated on that. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe if there's if you want my geeky opinion on something, you can leave comments in the description telling me what you'd like me to make videos about. But in the meantime, no matter what role you play, have a good game.